Stephen Finn, welcome to the Sports Agents.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you with us. And obviously, we're going to get on to the Ashes and why you think England can win it. And I know you'll be going down very soon. But I just want to start on your book and some of the emotional extracts that have been around and find out really what it took for you to tell those stories and to really kind of dig deep into what must have been a very emotional and pivotal period of your life.
Yeah, it's been a cathartic experience to go through the diaries that I kept at the time and to put them out onto a piece of paper and into a book. So yeah, I think the diaries were valuable in helping me to transport myself back to those moments in my life, both good and bad. But clearly the bad ones were a lot harder to relive than the good ones. But yeah, the process of writing the book kind of came about because it's a story that I wanted to tell at some stage, and a few weeks out from an Ashes series felt like a good time to tell it.
Why did you keep diaries? Did you keep diaries for actually your skill and to try and help your craft? Not thinking I'll write a book in a few years.
No, they weren't. The book wasn't the motivation for the diaries. I was advised to do it actually by Angus Fraser, who was a mentor of mine in my early 20s. And I think he was quite wary of the fact that I was going to Australia in 2010-11 for the first time as a 21-year-old who was clearly going to be in this unique situation where it was unusual for someone of that age to go straight into an Ashes series. And I think he thought it would be valuable that I had my thoughts down on a piece of paper so as at the end of a day I could reflect on what had happened, park it, and then move on to the next one, and then maybe reflect on them in time and use it as a reference point as my career went on. Weirdly, I only ever kept diaries during Ashes series. It was never other times of my career I didn't keep diaries. I'd have
notes. It'd be
notes.
Terrible if England were touring India this winter, wouldn't it? I mean, you would have been able to put a book out.
Well, we'd have had to time it perfectly in 2 years' time. But it was something that at the time it did help. And reading them back actually in 2010-11, you've got the diary entries are of great hope and excitement and expectation of what might come. And then as we moved through to 2013-14, when I got sent home from that tour for not being in a fit state really to play cricket for my country, they turned quite mean on myself and weren't that pleasant to reread.
And you are very, very honest about that decline in your mental health and what you were doing to try and help yourself. But also, you just said it there, you were mean to yourself. And you got into a kind of downward spiral, obviously, not helped then by being unselectable, as Ashley Giles said. And that really hurt you, didn't it, to hear that? When you read those diaries back, what is the turning point? I know that you were trying to tweak your run up, and so there were things going on the cricket pitch as well, but it felt like you weren't able to separate that from the rest of your life when you came off it.
Yeah, that was the difficulty, I think. Clearly, there's always a degree of anxiety and stress around playing cricket for your country or sport in general, because you want to do a good job, you want to do yourself justice, but yeah, I think the difficulty in separating it and more your self-worth, I think, you sort of determining what people think of you about how you're playing cricket. And that goes into how you thought your family was seeing you, how your friends and how your teammates. So when it started to eke into the rest of my life, I knew that there was something else going on. But yeah, the book, it reflects on those moments, and I am honest about how I was feeling at the time. But I wanted the book to be a story of the roller coaster that sport can be, and reflecting on actually the fact that being level and staying level and finding methods of being level are probably the most critical thing to having longevity in sport. And yeah, the story of the high of 2010-11, the low of 2013-14, but then the real bit of the story that I wanted to tell was how I pulled myself up from that low point to then be out there winning again in 2015.
We often say this. It is the most brutal mentally of all team sports. I firmly believe, because it's an individual battle within a team sport that is ultimately based on failure, isn't it?
Yeah, you fail a lot more than you succeed. Yeah.
You know, if you took 3 for 70 in a one-day game, you know, people go, well, you took 3 wickets. Yeah, but you're right. You know, you went for 70 off your 10 overs. You know, if a batsman gets 70, why did they not go on and get 100? If they get 100, why did they not go on and get a daddy 100? Do you know?
Yeah, yeah.
I find it, having sort of watched it for so much of my life and had one child go through junior county cricket, it is mentally brutal.
Yeah, the amount of time that you have to introspectively think about things is what makes it unique as well, in the sense that if you fail as a batter, you're sat down for the next 6 hours watching your team bat, thinking that you should be out there batting and that you threw it away. Or as a bowler, if you bowl a poor spell, you then disappear off to graze in the outfield and you're thinking, I've done a bad job for the team there, I've let my teammates down. So it's very unique in that sense that you are playing an individual game, but the collective sum of your parts is the team that is the most important thing. So yeah, and I think the letting people down was the thing that I struggled with the most, feeling like I was letting my parents, the people who'd helped me when I was younger, my teammates down when I was struggling is probably one of the main thoughts.
Did you ever tell your parents when you were going through it that you felt you were letting them down? Because I'm assuming they would have gone, don't be so stupid, Stephen.
Yes, yeah, and they almost certainly would have done, but no, I didn't.
So you kept it all.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I realised when I actually sought proper help in 2017. So 4 years after I experienced all the really bad feelings and thoughts. It's only then that I realised talking stuff through with people was actually the best process to understanding how you're feeling, and also developing methods to not let things compound to a point where you end up down this dark alley where you don't see a way out. And that's where I got in 2013-14, was I was at the end of this alleyway, vulnerable, not knowing where to turn or who to listen to. So I was letting so much information into my brain that it was just completely overloaded. Once I sought external help that wasn't related to a team, that's when I really started to understand and realise how my mind worked.
And it struck me as well that we're talking 2013-14. It's not that long ago. It's just over a decade. And yet you say people weren't really talking about mental health. And I think now we feel like everybody, can talk about their mental health. But sport is still, I think, a very tricky place to open up, because showing any vulnerability, takes enormous strength while you're in the middle of that career.
And that's where, when you're on a tour, and when you're on a long tour like an Ashes tour, that at that stage it was a 3-month tour, maybe even more, when you included the one-day series. You didn't want to show that vulnerability. You didn't want to drag other people down with you, I think was one of my feelings at the time as well. So yeah, talking about stuff and being open about the fact that things weren't absolutely perfect was something that wasn't as done then. I think people's attitudes have changed hugely, especially in cricket, towards that, because it is a game that lends itself to that degree of introspection.
Yeah.
That I think it's understood now that it's acceptable for people to take breaks. Ben Stokes took a break not that long ago to help him sort some stuff out. So I just didn't feel as though that was an option to me then, when it would definitely have been the most kind thing to walk away from that tour sooner. I didn't feel like I could do it, and I didn't want to do it.
Should somebody else have got involved and made that decision for you in the kindest way?
Well, they did eventually in Ashley Giles.
Being unplayable. But
yes.
Before it gets to that point, because you'd like to think that those around you, and I don't mean your teammates, but there are enough people, aren't there, around a team who can spot the signs?
There are, but I think that was a tour where everyone had their own stuff going on as well. And if we remember, Jonathan Trott went home after the first test because he wasn't in a great state. And the reception that he received, front page news for being weak, for walking away. I was there 24 years old doing something that I dreamt of my entire life. It wasn't something that I wanted to put myself in a position where I could or would voluntarily walk away from it. So I was very much at the time, you just pretending that everything's okay, pretending that you're working hard to find your way out of it, which I was. I was just never willing to walk away from it at that stage.
You're also particularly vulnerable, aren't you? I think as a fast bowler. If you are a batsman who is out of form, you might come in, nick off, you're out, bang, there you go. There's a discussion about why a batsman is scoring so many single-figure innings or whatever, but their pain, if they're out of nick, doesn't last very long.
Short-lived, yeah.
It's short-lived, isn't it? Whereas yours, you are much more exposed because it's 6 balls every over, and you might be asked to bowl 20 overs in a day. And if your run-up is a bit awry or your direction is a bit awry, it is brutal.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I found at that stage was that I was compounding bad habits in everything that I did. And cricket is a repetitive sport, clearly, because you bowl and you bat so much, and you train so much, and you practice so much. I think, I was just at that stage compounding bad habits. So by bowling more in the nets, my technique was getting worse because I was just practicing the things that I wasn't doing very well all the time,
rather than the good things that you were still doing.
Exactly, and also taking a step away in that moment is sometimes the thing that stops the rot and stops the bad habits actually setting in and becoming a full-time habit. So yeah, there are lots of things that I would do differently, and that stage of my career was one that I found particularly difficult, but coming back from that and then winning the Ashes again in 2015 is the thing that I'm most proud of.
Yeah. And 2011, that series obviously for you was brilliant. You played a key role in England's win, and that's the last time that England have won an Ashes series down under. So we had Tuffers on here telling us how hard it is to win, but he's optimistic just a couple of weeks ago. I think you're also similarly optimistic about this England team, that they can do something.
Yeah, I am, and I see similarities kind of to the way that we went down there in 2010-11 in the sense that
we've got a lot of tall, fast bowlers.
Well, we've got that and quick, fast bowlers. Yeah. But I think on the other side of the fence, you need there to be a degree of turbulence in the Australian camp for cracks to start to appear, because over the last 13 years, since we went for the 2013-14 Ashes, they've had a very settled team. Every time you go down there, you almost know exactly to a man who you're going to face, but there are a lot of question marks in the build-up to this first Test match around the Australian team. What is the makeup of their top 3? How are they going to fit both their all-rounders into their lineup? Will they go with an all-seam attack in Perth? Their captain, Pat Cummins, isn't available for the first Test at the very least. So there's a degree of turbulence there that makes me believe that Australia aren't as settled as they have been previously. And I think that the attitude with which England play is something that, one, Australians will really respect, even though they're getting a lot of stick in the papers and in the media down there at the moment. I think when it comes to the cricket actually being played, I think England standing there and puffing their chest out and not allowing themselves to be blown away by Australia, as has happened in the last 3 away Ashes series, I think will serve them really well. And they'll gain the respect of the Australian public for playing that way. And I just think it's a great opportunity for England. I really do see it as that.
The uncertainty around Australia is around selection.
Yes.
Not really sure who their openers, as you say, not sure who their openers are going to be, necessarily who their number 3 is, whether they'll play 2 all round and so on. The uncertainty around England is the majority of the top order can't seem to buy a run. So it's slightly different, isn't it? Because some of those Australians where there are question marks over selection have actually had quite good domestic Sheffield Shield campaigns, whereas England, I know it's a different format in the white ball in New Zealand, but some of the batters didn't look in great nick.
No, they didn't. But like you said, it's a different format, a different country, different conditions. So yeah, I'm not overly concerned about the fact that the batters didn't score heaps of runs in New Zealand. Clearly, they're going to have to sharpen up by the time they do land in Australia and they all get together and play that warm-up game they have against the Lions. But all of this has to be caveated with, this is one of the most difficult things for an England team to go and do. There's a reason why only 2 teams have won there since the 70s or 80s. Yeah. And we can't forget that England haven't won a Test match in Australia since 2011 when we won that 5th Test match in Sydney 14
years
ago.
Lost 13 out of 15.
Exactly. So that is the caveat that all of this comes with. Australia is an incredibly hard place to go and win, but I do firmly believe that this is England's best chance in 15 years to be able to win down there. Australians like to latch on to that statement and say, oh, you think you're going to win? You need to listen carefully to the language. This is England's best chance in 15 years to win down there.
You were 21 years old in that series, took 14 wickets in the first 3 tests. You must have just thought, oh, why has everybody just made this so hard? This is, you're in that zone. It must have felt like your whole kind of career was going to be like this, and similarly players around you. So just can tap into the mental state of that team and why they were so successful, because it feels, listening to you today and Tough as a couple of weeks ago, and anybody who talks about the mental side of these Ashes series, you've almost got to win that battle first. You've got to somehow drown out the noise that's coming, from the Australian public and press, while creating your own narrative, which is that's quite energy sapping in itself, isn't it?
Yes, it can be, but I think you need that siege mentality of the team together taking on Australia and the Australian public, and I think that this team do have that siege mentality. The mentality that I had when I went on that 2010 tour, I was 21 years old and I was so naive about what I was walking into that I just went into it completely eyes wide open, saying to myself, this isn't the last chance you're going to have to play in Australia. You hopefully you're going to have a long international career where you'll have other bites of the cherry. And I went into it just thinking, just try your hardest. All you can do is try your hardest. And if it's not your time, or you're too young and you're too inexperienced, then that's okay. That doesn't matter. And actually, I went through the rest of my career trying to find that naive mindset again, because that's when you bowl your best, when you're free, when you've got no baggage, when you can just stand at the top of your mark, take a deep breath and completely focus on what's happening at the other end.
When you got thrown the ball then to bowl your first delivery, were you aware of any reaction in the crowd? What were you thinking as you stood at your mark and looked? Who was at the other end? I don't know. Who was?
The first ball, I'd be lying if I said I could remember the very first ball. I can remember my first wicket, which was Simon Cattage, which came in my first spell, caught and bowled, where he leading edge one back to me and I dived forward and caught it just off the ground and then tossed the ball up. So I can remember that very vividly. But in Australia, the grounds are so big that actually it's just a wall of noise. So the Gabba is 40-odd thousand, and you're stood there in the middle, a long way away from it, with the ball in your hand. And you've got processes that you go through that allow you to get tunnel vision to just focus on the 22 yards of the pitch, which then means that you could be in a net, you could be in the park, you could be anywhere. Through your processes, it helps you help make that feel the same all the time. So I wasn't anything in particular I noticed.
In 2010, 2011, not your first ball, but how much discussion was there about how important the first ball of the series was? And obviously, you could go back to, I think Zach Crawley in the last Ashes hit the first ball for 4, didn't he? Before that, Rory Burns was bowled round his legs, very first ball. I think the majority of people listening will remember Steve Harmison's first ball. I can't remember what the year was. Down on
6-7.
6-7 down under that went past third slip. So how much? So actually, your in 2010, 2011 was the first one down under since Harmy had bowled at first slip. What was the discussion about that first ball? Because it does set a tone.
It does set a tone. We didn't focus on the very first ball. We focused on the game as a whole and then breaking that game down into segments. And it didn't go great for us. Strauss got out in the first over, fourth ball, caught gully off the bowling of Ben Hilfenhaus, caught by Mike Hussey. And that first over. So I went up. I was excited. I've watched the Ashes all the time when I was younger. I went up to the viewing gallery because you have to walk up through the crowd to the viewing gallery. And I sat there for the first over. I was like, great, this is amazing, Ashes cricket. And then Strauss got out, caught gully, fourth ball, and I was like, no, I'm going back to the dressing room. So I don't want to see or hear this live. So disappeared back down to the dressing room and effectively watched the rest of the Test match from a TV, but on a slight delay. So the TV is delayed, so you can hear the stomps and the bashing of the crowd above you and the stadium shaking. And then you see what's happened on the TV. So Siddle took a hat-trick that day, and I was batting number 11. So the first wicket went, the ground shaking. The second wicket went, the ground shaking, and then it comes up on the TV, and then people are climbing over each other to find their pads, to get their bat, their box, the whole lot. So it was pandemonium in there. So that my first day of Ashes cricket was complete carnage. But what we always said we were going to do in those moments was that we were going to push back against Australia, and we did so. We fought back with the ball, even though they got a big score. We still fought back, and then with the bat in the end of that first test, 517 for one.
Yeah.
That felt like a win when we left the Gabba, and we carried that into the next Test match. So it's imperative that England do fight back against Australia, because they'll be respected for it, and I think it was 7-1.
Are you able now to enjoy the Ashes? Because it does seem like it's got the highs and the lows of you as a person, of you as a cricketer, kind of all tied up in it, as you'll read when you read the book. Does it? Not you read the book, obviously.
I've read it a few times, Gabby.
Yeah, I imagine you have. I don't know if you know this, but it's quite emotional.
Well, I cried during reading the audiobook, so I voiced the audiobook, and
yes,
I had to pause.
Had to
pause 3 or 4 times.
I mean, you'd be surprised how many people probably claim to write a book and haven't actually written it and still don't read what they've put in it, I would imagine. But anyhow.
Are you able to, though, look forward to this series and enjoy the Ashes?
I am. I enjoy the magnitude of it. The build-up is exciting. And because I'm going to be there, the thing that I'm most excited about is being able to be out there on the grass of the pitch at Perth as the players are walking out for the anthems, and you sense that atmosphere. And actually, when you're in it, you try and insulate yourself from the magnitude of what's going on. You have an understanding of how important the Ashes is to people, but you very much have a mentality where all that matters is what happens within the 4 walls of the dressing room. And you take that out onto the pitch and you keep yourselves insulated from it. Whereas now, as a broadcaster and someone who loves watching cricket, I can go there and soak everything up. I can read the Australian papers without fearing that I might be in it for being called useless or something. So I can fully appreciate and understand how important it is to people. And that helps me reflect on my career with even more fondness for the moments that I played a part in those Ashes series.
Although I think the Aussie media are still going after Stuart Broad, aren't they? And,
yes.
and he's in the media now and not even playing, but it's not stopping them going after him. Your tour, that 2010-11 tour, Strauss was an incredible leader, wasn't he? I mean, he was a real leader of men. And England have that with Ben Stokes now. Is the danger with Ben that he tries to do too much? And, you know, we saw sometimes in last summer's Test series against India, he tried to win it on his own, because he can win it on his own, you know, and would bowl long spells. Does there need to be somebody who goes after 5 or 6 overs, so maybe give yourself a rest?
I've played with Ben. I've not played under him, but I've played with him a fair amount. And good luck to the person who's going to tap him on the shoulder and tell him not to continue to bowl. I saw a clip last year of Brendan McCullum signalling down to Tim Southey, who was the bowling coach, saying, you tell him to stop bowling. But he is that kind of character, and that's what makes him an amazing cricketer, is the fact that he will not leave it to anyone else in that moment. He is the person who wants to be there at the nub end of the serious bits of cricket. That's why he those iconic moments in 2019 during the Ashes series at Headingley, the World Cup finals, the 2 that he's played in that he's won for England. So I look at those flashpoints, and certainly Ben Stokes as an all-round cricketer is going to be absolutely critical to England being successful in this series. And I do hope there is someone that will be able to tap him on the shoulder after the 7th over of his spell and say, let's look at the bigger picture here, Ben, because
it's only day 1 of the first.
Exactly.
Well, I'm sure you'll have a great time down there. Thank you so much for coming in and chatting to us. And Stephen's book, The Ashes Files, is out right now.
The Sports Agents
with Gabby Logan and Mark Chapman.